Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Toast and Topics. I'm Ben.
And I'm Sachin.
Sachin, can you believe it's already March?
I know, right? It feels like literally just yesterday we were ringing in the new year, and now here we are, marching into spring.
You never miss an opportunity for a pun, do you, Sachin?
Never. It's one of my many talents, Ben. And speaking of talents, today's episode is going to be a real treat. We're diving into the realm of artificial intelligence, exploring the latest advancements and innovations in the technology.
And on that note, now it would be a good time to admit that everything we just said above loosely followed a script given to us directly by ChatGPT. You might have been able to tell, you might not have been. And don't worry, we have not done this for any of our other episodes. But AI has been very much in the news lately. The November 2022 release of OpenAI's chatbot, known as ChatGPT, which is capable of generating human-like and, very creative prose at times, has made many people aware of the massive potential of artificial intelligence technology. And most recently, OpenAI, this same firm, released Sora, which is a video generator that is capable of creating highly realistic, believable video clips. For example, California during the gold rush, or more whimsical examples like two pirate ships fighting in a coffee cup. Neither Sachin nor I know all that much about AI, but we've been doing a lot of research on the topic over the past week. There's certainly still a lot for us to learn here, but the idea of this episode is to give a really high level primer of why the recent wave of advances we have seen in AI is so significant, what the effects of these advances might be for the economy, and what we might expect from these advances in the years ahead.
Yeah, that's right. This is an episode that we've been looking forward to for a long time, so let's just dive right in. Ben, being the history buff that you are, I think it would be a good idea for you to walk us through the advances that we've seen in AI up to this point.
Yeah, thanks, Sachin. And I'll do my best to keep this brief. At a high level, the development of AI is really inextricably tied to the creation of computers, the first electronic versions of which were created toward the end of World War II as a part of the Allies' efforts to decrypt the communications of the Axis powers. And these machines proved themselves to be capable of complex calculations that took human brains far longer to complete. Alan Turing, a famous British cryptologist and mathematician, was one of the first to recognize this, predicting that computers would one day become very good at games such as chess and even eventually be able to answer questions in the same kind of a way that a human can now.
So it sounds like really hardware beats wetware.
Yeah, exactly. Mushy human brains don't hold a candle to computers in a lot of cases. But a lot of the excitement about AI was actually crystallized at Dartmouth, which in 1956 held a summer research project on AI that brought together leading experts. It's widely considered to be the moment at which artificial intelligence as a field was founded.
Interesting. I really didn't know that Dartmouth was such an integral part of the development of AI. So shout out to us. But researchers, it seemed like were initially very optimistic about the pace at which AI would develop. And many thought that an artificial intelligence could approach a human level capability, and that could be created within 20 to 30 years. But based on my understanding, that didn't quite happen, right?
Yeah, it didn't really happen at all. And I think the reason is just that people were not able to envision the many technical challenges that, were strewn along this path toward creating higher end AI capabilities. But even though the progress of the technology was slower than many people thought it would be at first, there was some notable progress on artificial intelligence geared toward specific tasks over the latter half of the 20th century. For example, the artificial intelligence Deep Blue was able to defeat chess champion Garry Kasparov in 1997, a moment many consider to be a turning point in AI's march toward overtaking human capabilities. But although AIs were being trained to master very specific tasks, they were not able to learn effectively or generate new material outside of a framework provided by human programmers. Chess is, again, a fantastic example of that. That finally started to change in the 2010s with the introduction of generative AI. In 2016, AlphaGo, a computer program developed by DeepMind, defeated Go master Lee Sedol. This was incredibly important because Go is a very complex game with orders of magnitude more possible moves than chess. In other words, programmers couldn't simply preload a set of moves onto AlphaGo. Instead, the program needed to be capable of intuition and generating new solutions to problems.
So, what are the technologies that are actually underpinning these new generative AIs? It sounds like this was a really large step forward in computers going from being able to learn tasks according to a set of rules to actually creating things based on content consumed. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Ultimately, generative AI is based upon machine learning, which is a subset of AI where algorithms are used to learn patterns from data, improving their performance on a task over time without being explicitly programmed for that task. To get into some of the concepts that underpin that idea, neural networks are a type of machine learning model inspired by the human brain's architecture. It consists of layers of interconnected nodes, or quote unquote neurons. And these models are fundamental to AI's ability to process complex patterns in large data sets. Neural networks are essentially, again, just an interconnected group of nodes that are allowing computers to learn based off of the associations between these nodes. Um, so it can then use that reservoir of relational information to come up with entirely novel solutions to problems just based upon all of the training that it has done. And so that is how models like ChatGPT from OpenAI or Llama from Facebook work. These are large language models that take vast amounts of data. In the case of these two models, written text, and then they basically train on that data to generate new high quality written material just based off of everything they have learned from it.
Got it. So that's what a large language model is. But I've always wondered, what does the GPT in ChatGPT actually stand for?
Yeah, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformers. And though that's not very catchy, in plain English, that means that they're essentially just large language models that have been pre-trained on huge amounts of text, again, to generate human-like content. And it's this same kind of, neural network, GPT kind of approach that's being applied to other activities in which AIs are excelling as well. AIs such as DALL-E and Sora, again, have just been trained on vast amounts of video content to make realistic videos and so on.
Wow, yeah. I mean, it seems like we're now quite literally living in a moment in which AI is able to perform many creative tasks far better than humans. Just look at how realistic the videos generated by Sora are, as an example. Or take the fact that the latest iterations of ChatGPT are now capable of acing tests such as the GRE and the LSAT. To bring it back to Alan Turing, we're now at a point where a human could ask a computer a question and receive a response that's really not far discernible from what another human might give. There's a theory that some of you might be familiar with called Moore's Law, which estimates that computing power doubles every year. Now, there's some debate over whether this will be able to continue much longer, but I think that we're now at the point where computing power seems to have reached a really critical threshold to enable far more sophisticated AI than anything we've seen before.
Yeah, we may have gotten to a point where we've squeezed all the juice out of Moore's Law, so to speak. It's getting harder and harder to fit more circuits onto, a given semiconductor. But the sky really does seem to be the limit here in just a fundamental way. Computers can operate much faster than the human brain, theoretically, in terms of spikes and synaptic transmissions. Studies indicate that the brain can perform at most about 1,000 basic operations per second, which is about 10 million times slower than a high-end computer today. In other words, if we do get to a point at which computers are truly able to think, they're going to be capable of thinking millions of times faster than a human being. And so, with that, let's dive into the economic implications of these advances in artificial intelligence.
So there are some obvious benefits to having cheaply available AIs that can perform many of the time-intensive and repetitive tasks that humans currently do. With the help of AI, each hour of any given person's labor could become far more productive, and as a result, we could see large increases in income. There's some research that's out there by Goldman Sachs that suggests that widespread AI could eventually drive a 7% or almost $7 trillion increase in annual global GDP over a 10-year period. Academic studies point to a 3 percentage point rise in annual labor productivity growth as well in firms that adopt the technology. And that could represent a huge uplift in incomes if you compound that over many years. And in that vein, from a macroeconomic policy perspective, AI is already very much at the heart of a massive technological contest between countries. In the past year alone, the US and Chinese government have pledged 40 to 50 billion dollars each for AI investments. We've seen this roll through in export controls with the Biden administration enacting strict controls that ban the sale of cutting edge AI technology, such as chips and chip making equipment, to competing countries such as Russia and China. And the government has banned Americans from sharing their AI expertise with other countries. We've also seen nearshoring. In response to this, other countries have brought their supply chains closer to home to protect themselves from the risk of growing sanctions and restrictions on AI. For example, between 2021 and 2022, the Chinese state spent nearly $300 billion to recreate the entire supply chain for AI and other semiconductors back at home.
Yeah, the speed and urgency with which Beijing has been trying to recreate or move electronics supply chains to be entirely within China is impressive, and it totally merits a podcast episode. But overall, I think it's fair to say that the battles that you just described, Sachin, are only going to intensify in the years ahead, and they could also become increasingly political in nature as the potential of this technology becomes clear. But moving away from geopolitics a bit, I think it's also worth talking about just the basic economic benefits and harms that AI could bring about. My perspective is that while there are many new industries that are likely to be created due to advances in AI technology, there are some, kind of incumbent industries that are potentially going to be harmed. One interesting example of that is actually coding and computer science. Something I found to be fascinating there is that recent advances in generative AI are actually allowing some coders to simply, type into ChatGPT, generate X, Y, or Z lines of code. And it is able to do that effectively. In other words, it's not quite as crucial now to have an intimate knowledge of programming languages. On that note, the CEO of NVIDIA, which is a technology company that designs the semiconductor chips used to power many forms of artificial intelligence, recently noted in an interview that school children today perhaps shouldn't even learn coding. It's quite possible that in the near future, computers will simply be able to do all of this. Graphic design and that sort of content creation are another industry that very well could be affected. AIs are clearly capable of generating incredible graphic content. And so for people who specialize in industries that involve the creation of artwork, there is a possibility of seeing substantial increases in productivity, but also potentially job losses. The legal industry is another area that really could be heavily affected by AI. A study by Goldman Sachs, I think it's the same study, Sachin, that you had mentioned earlier, noted that 44% of legal tasks could be performed by AI, which is more than any occupation surveyed except for clerical and administrative support. And the basic reason for that is just that the legal industry requires synthesizing and absorbing huge numbers of documents. It's inefficient for people to do that, but AI is capable of doing that very effectively.
Yeah, I think that as with any emerging technology, it's true that AI is going to be disruptive to certain industries. But the flip side to this is that AI could also create whole new industries, businesses, skill sets, and careers. So I think that maybe the predictions of massive job losses could be overblown. I think that there's huge potential for AI to do good, particularly in developing countries. Um, Developing countries have a notorious shortage of skilled workers, such as teachers, doctors, and engineers. And AI can help fill that void, not necessarily by replacing these workers, but by helping them to be more productive and more accurate. Just think about the potential applications in education, for example. A typical student in sub-Saharan Africa spends 6 years in school, but retains only 3 years worth of learning, according to a study from The Economist. Additionally, this study found that four-fifths of middle school math teachers in select developing countries did not understand the concepts that they were supposed to teach. AI chatbots can help both students and teachers learn and retain more information more quickly, and give undivided attention to literally any student at any hour of the day. Healthcare is another similar example. Accurate AI translation could also make it much easier for patients and healthcare workers in the developing world to tap into the world's medical knowledge. And it could also make it easier for doctors to more accurately identify diseases and the most appropriate solutions. So I think that in the best case scenario, AI could help make whole populations healthier, better educated, and better informed.
These are great points, Sachin, and I agree with all of them. But we also need to be mindful of some of the potential, downright risks associated with improving artificial intelligence. For example, cyber attacks and fraud, as well as the unprecedented ability here to, parse through and potentially misuse private data about individuals. But the final risk that I've been thinking about a lot, it's a bit more abstract, is just the kind of existential risk associated with rapid improvements in the technology. I recently finished Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom, which is an outstanding book on the risks that AI might present as it develops further. I'd recommend that, anyone listening to this read the book. And arguably the most compelling risk that Bostrom identifies is that of a takeoff of superintelligence. That is to say that once an AI becomes as smart as or even smarter than humans, it also follows that it's going to be able to improve itself at a rate faster than humans are able to. And if and when that happens, we could see an exponential increase in the intelligence of AI. The already swift progress that we have seen in AI over the past several years could become far swifter. And we could face an intelligence that surpasses the collective intelligence of humanity in every respect. And that's truly something that could be very challenging for us to control. It's something that could, if we handle this incorrectly, present a real challenge to humanity's existence. And so, in addition to the short-term effects of AI that will be hitting markets over the next decade, it's also, I think, really important to be aware of these longer-term risks, just because AI is going to represent a really seismic shift in, who actually holds the intelligence within our economy.
Wow, it really is a scary thought not being able to control a computer, Ben. And on that happy note, I will try to sum this conversation up. So, this technology obviously has massive potential to do good in the world, but at the same time, it needs to be really carefully regulated as it scales in size, as well as monitored as it develops to ensure that we have the right controls over the technology.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I hope that we are up to the challenge.
I hope so too. Well, we've covered a lot in today's episode and really have still only just scratched the surface on AI. I'm really glad that we were able to spend the time that this topic deserves and learn more about this exciting technology. To our audience, if you want to hear us talk more about technology and AI more generally, please do leave us feedback on our LinkedIn, our Instagram pages, and we'd be happy to go further into this.
Yeah, that's right. And in our next episode, we will pivot a bit from AI and technology to talk about standardized testing and the recent decision by many major universities to reinstate standardized test requirements. You won't want to miss it, and we'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to Toast and Topics. If you like what you heard, please rate and review us on the podcasting platform of your choice. And please give us feedback if you want to hear more conversations like this on AI, technology, or anything related. We'll catch you next time, everyone. Thanks again.